In just the past month, stars of 2 major Hollywood productions have opted against performing intimacy scenes on screen, some covertly while another overtly. Coincidentally, the name of the 2 projects are You and You People, a TV series starring Penn Badgley and a movie with Jonah Hill, respectively. Before I explain why I believe actors pulling out of intimacy scenes is harmful both to society and cinema, I'll break down the controversy surrounding each project. You People is an interracial dating comedy film starring Jonah Hill and Lauren London, portraying a Jewish man and a black woman engaged to marry, despite the culture clash of their parents, played by Eddie Murphy, Nia Long, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and David Duchovny. Before any whisper of the controversy I'm about to share, the movie received mixed to negative reviews for its unfunny script and lack of romantic chemistry between its leads. I saw the film myself and I laughed quite a bit, but in spite of the script, and more so because of what the talented actors did with it. I lost belief in the romantic connection quite early and even read that Lauren London herself was incredulous of her movie couple. The movie's sense of mediocrity was exposed when Andrew Schultz, a comedian and actor in the film, revealed on his podcast that the final kiss between Jonah Hill and Lauren London was in fact CGI'd. This reminded audiences that in this age of dating apps and virtual reality, kisses could be CGI'd, or even had to be. Moviegoers have associated CGI for years with explosions and outer space, sights that would cost a fortune to portray on screen, not faking a pleasant gesture. I mean, imagine how much money was spent digitally inching the characters' lips together. There was some valid speculation online as to why the kiss didn't happen. Some pointed to the pandemic's film set protocols, while others suggested London was still grieving the untimely death of her late boyfriend Nipsey Hussle. But as many have pointed out, all of this is dispelled by a 2021 film where London shared a makeout scene with Michael B. Jordan. While the You People have been quiet about the film's stunted romance, Penn Badgley, the star of the TV show You, has been quite outspoken to why he no longer performs intimacy scenes, despite portraying a sex-crazed psychopath on the show. This sort of contradiction begins to illuminate a pernicious problem that we'll discuss with actors' on-screen celibacy. Badgley cites his wife as his secret reason for turning down roles, and this reasoning leads me to think, good for him, but also there are thousands of actors lining up to perform those intimacy scenes in all their rawness for the millions of dollars that he gets paid. But Badgley doesn't stop there. He convolutes his reasoning by citing the industry itself. He says of intimacy scenes, "It's not a place where I've blurred lines. There's almost nothing I can say with more consecration." That aspect of Hollywood has always been very disturbing to me, and that aspect of the job, that mercurial boundary, has always been something that I actually don't want to play with at all. Badgley sneaks in one last point that he's also older than his love interest now, whereas that wasn't the case earlier. It's at this point where I take less seriously his rationale of fidelity and more that Penn Badgley doesn't believe in the art of acting. Isn't there a fine line between forcing consent, between cheating and pretending, between being Leonardo DiCaprio and playing him? It seems to me Penn Badgley does not have this confidence, and instead he stoops to the black and white crime and punishment standards of the industry that he shuns. I can't help but feel that the case of You and You People is a cocktail of the Metoo movement and the pandemic stirred anxiously. Most of us can agree that the Metoo movement started with a virtuous cause, to put away predators in power, and it did largely make society a safer place in many ways. However, as many social movements do, its hyper-reactive reach has had adverse effects on how we interact with each other interpersonally. In 2019, Lean In, a women's organization whose mission is to help women achieve their ambitions and work to create an equal world, conducted a study on working relationships within the first 2 years of the Me Too era. They found that 60% of senior-level men in the US were uncomfortable participating in common work activity with a woman, such as mentoring, working alone, or socializing together. This number represented a 32% increase from the year before the poll. A separate Pew Research poll found in 2022 that nearly half of US adults, both male and female, believe it is now harder for men to know how to interact with women at work. Just as sexual harassment in the workplace can be a major issue, so can the numbness that comes with a lack of intimacy and deep relationships in the workplace. In a pre-pandemic 9-to-5 world, many of us spent literally half our waking days and our most charismatic hours at our jobs. In that light, where were meaningful connections meant to derive from if not a place of shared interests? Is it drunk and tired at a nightclub? Or in the Darwinian and dehumanizing swiping of dating apps? It's important that there are now resources in workplaces for situations of genuine abuse. But by the same token, it's become ever more difficult for autonomous adults of similar statuses to broker the line between sexual harassment and harmless flirtation on an interpersonal level rather than on a corporate level. At many companies now, it would be punishable for an intern to flirt with a senior employee, the same way that President Barack Obama did when he met his future wife Michelle. What the lead-in and Pew polls show is that even men without romantic agendas regard interactions with female coworkers, as Penn Badgley put it, as something they actually don't want to play with at all. Once you add on to this a pandemic where these interactions are not only feared, but through a computer screen, and which sets the virtual stage for Mark Zuckerberg to promote his Black Mirror-esque metaverse ads, we're left with a reality where experts suggest 1 in 4 young people will be single for the rest of their lives. It seems there's now more intimacy in virtual reality than physical reality. Couple with this, the promiscuous body influencer pyramid of Instagram, TikTok, and OnlyFans, we live in the most sexualized time in recent memory, while studies show that the number of intimate relationships of actual humans has plummeted in the past decade. Cue in the perfect villain and hero of our times, Joe Goldberg, a possessive sexual deviant, and Penn Badgley, the actor who plays him, apprehensive to do intimacy scenes. This is the very issue with Badgley's opposition. He plays right into the unhealthy and extreme relationship our society currently has with sex. He partakes in glamorizing it, but is too frightened to navigate the nuances of it. And in doing so, he emulates the same guilty conscience as the industry that he disavows. Often when someone so dogmatically disavows an activity, that person is projecting their own sinful desires, like an addict pushing away a vice. There can be no negotiation.
We're the same.
No. I'm nothing like you.
The timeless quote comes to mind, "The lady doth protest too much." Conversely, a virtuous actor is comfortable with his identity and can play with a sinful role without quote-unquote blurring lines or compromising his values. And the organization Lean In is advocating for a similar thing. They titled their research article, "Men Commit to Mentor Women. Not harassing women is not enough." It's saying, instead of completely running away from the problem, try to reform it and make it better. I don't want to imply any baseless assumptions about Penn Badgley's character. I imagine him to be a kind and down-to-earth person and has the right intentions with the things that he's saying. And I'm actually partial to this view because I once sat next to him at Peace Food Cafe in the Greenwich Village while I was studying at NYU, and he was incredibly friendly to waiters who asked him for pictures. My feeling is more that he's playing it safe in the culture we're in. Perhaps he knows that with any mishap in an intimacy scene, he won't be judged by his intentions, but by Hollywood's guilty conscience. He already implies this by associating his on-screen celibacy with Hollywood's very disturbing history. However, by simply avoiding Hollywood's misbehavior rather than revising it, Badgley helps push intimacy from one extreme to another, glamorized to strained, the same pendulum our culture is now beaten down by. There's another consequence to the normalization of actors avoiding intimacy scenes. It may not seem significant to many, but it will to those who love cinema, who care about its effect on our culture, and those like myself who love making movies. Any indie filmmaker who writes nuanced love stories or substantive intimacy scenes like I have in the past and still aspire to, will have an exponentially harder time getting those stories made. Young actors will fear ruining their careers. They'll cite people like Penn Badgley, Lauren London, and Jonah Hill and say, forget a bedroom scene, if those stars won't kiss on screen for millions of dollars, why should I? At least referring to Jonah Hill and Lauren London. I get that there have been abuses of power on film sets for many years and there's a long history of it, but why sink to those standards? Why not rise above them? There is a realistic middle ground where we're conscientious but not paralyzed about sex. Unfortunately, we live in a time of extremes, not in-betweens. movies are held to the gritty standards of traditional documentaries, where professional actors aren't trusted to portray characters of a different background or sexual orientation. This same culture worships professional pretenders known as influencers on social media and documentary series on Netflix that are staged and produced like traditional Hollywood movies. Acting is no longer accepted as an art form, but a lifestyle. And our favorite actors retreat to movies that don't just use CGI, but often are CGI. No trace of humanity to be scrutinized. Right now, it's just these two productions in the past month shying away from intimacy. But even if we see more actors tagging along to reform the industry, this won't cure Hollywood of its sexual indecency. It'll just smuggle it onto our social media feed, where the industry is pivoting its content toward anyway. With no real romance in cinema, we'll be stuck in theaters with glossy, politically correct CGI binge traps that ultimately trigger the same dopamine cycle that pits society into mindlessly scrolling and seeking intimacy online and lacking it in person. Let me know what you think of this take. Do you agree or strongly disagree? I want to hear it in the comments. Have a good one, guys.